I want to welcome everybody tonight. It's been quite a day. We're back officially. It's incredible to be here with you all, and we have a really terrific panel that's lined up, so I hope as people get settled in, they can grab their cocktail and come down. We'll have dinner in a bit, but we still have more great content for you. So before we get started with the session and I introduce our moderator and what we're going for here today, I want to take a minute to thank two key sponsors who are supporting and are putting on this reception. So I'm trying to find the Jobs Ohio people. Sevi, Aaron, please stand up. Everybody, Jobs Ohio here. They're the ones that are hosting this beautiful reception, so we should thank them. And it's just terrific to have you here, so thank you guys. Another sponsor who has been with LSI since day one, amazing supporters, it's Priya Healthcare. And I'm going to actually summon Tom Keating to come up here if he has a minute. Where's Tom Keating at? He's got 10 minutes of stand-up comedy for us here. Say a few words, whatever you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, just thank you so much for coming. Scott, your team, to be able to put this meeting together during this year is absolutely amazing. We've got such a great group of people, whether it's the venture community, the emerging medtech founders who are service providers. This is about the medtech ecosystem, and we want to be a big supporter of that so that we can drive patient access across the entire industry.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Priya, for dinner. Jobs Ohio for the reception. It's going to be a beautiful night. We're going to have a nice sunset. And without further ado, we have some really interesting content, some amazing innovators up here. And our moderator for today's session, which is Opportunities in the Drive Towards Intelligent Surgery, is Daniel Teow. And Daniel is one of two founding managing partners at Hunniwell Lake Ventures. They are a medtech VC firm. They specialize in surgical innovations, technologies that help our surgeons see, treat, and heal better. Daniel comes from an operational industry background, having been CFO and head of international business at a surgical instrument startup. They were acquired by private equity, and more recently, he has been a strong cheerleader for the development of intelligent surgery. What a topic we have here tonight. He spoke on this topic at various medical device and investment conferences. He's got a terrific lineup, and so please let's give them a round for bypassing the bar and coming here to spend some time to share their insights with us. Please.
Thank you, Scott. Well, welcome again, everyone, to this panel on intelligent surgery. I want to thank Scott Pantel and his team at LSI for pulling off this minor miracle. I recall this being the last major MedTech conference in February last year before everything shut down after the pandemic. And so 1 year and 3 months later, it feels good to be back, isn't it? Kudos to Scott and his team. So, today the topic here is about intelligent surgery, and probably nothing in healthcare evokes more fear and trepidation than surgery, because it affects all of us. It feels painful, just the imagery of it, the blood, the gore, the pain, the invasiveness, scares most people. But because, not just that, but also because 1 in 3 of us will probably have to be under the knife at some point or other in our lives. And almost all of us will know someone who has been through surgery. And so this is a topic that affects all of us. Now, sadly, although there have been a lot of innovations in the past few decades in the surgical suite, many of the devices that we see today in the surgery suite are still pretty medieval. And I think it's high time and it's timely that now there's a wave of innovation that's coming through, largely enabled by entrepreneurs here on my right and financed by investors and strategic here on my left. So for today, instead of me introducing all of the speakers, Socrates said, to know thyself is wisdom. I kind of reverse that. The wise should introduce themselves and know themselves best. So rather than for me to introduce them, I'll ask each one of our panelists today to introduce themselves and their organizations and their connection to intelligent surgery. Starting maybe with Sean.
Great. Thanks very much, Daniel. My name is Sean Cheng. I'm part of the Philips Ventures team. We're a team of 5 across the world that does investments for Philips, the multinational. Our focuses are across the board in all Philips businesses, but for this context, we're very much interested in intraoperative surgery, both device and software side. So great to be here, and thanks for listening.
Rachel.
Hi, Rachel Van Stratton. I am part of Johnson & Johnson. I support the General Surgery, Robotics, and Digital Solutions group. Most recently, have really been supporting the advanced imaging space, have been just recently closed and brokered a deal in the pre-op space. So very interested in advancing the entire continuum of the general surgery care, as well as in robotics especially.
Thank you, Rachel. And myself, Daniel Teow, as Scott mentioned, we're at Hunniwell Lake Ventures, where we invest in surgical innovations. And we are on a mission to make surgery safer, less invasive, and more accessible to more people. Nissan?
I'm Nissan Elimelech. I'm the CEO and founder of Augmedics. Augmedics develops an augmented reality surgical navigation system. The system provides data to surgeons while they do their surgeries. We focus mainly on spine surgeries for now. We bring X-ray vision to surgeons. They can see the patient's anatomy through spine and tissue. Makes it a very intelligent system, and we will add in the future more capabilities, intelligent capabilities, which I will be happy to share.
Bruce, next.
Thank you, Daniel. My name is Bruce Lichorowic. I'm the CEO and founder of Galen Robotics. We are commercializing a robot that's coming out of Johns Hopkins under Dr. Russ Taylor's tutelage. And the robot is really designed to hold any instrument, which we would take these instruments that the surgeons would normally be holding and give them intelligence, but basically give them some type of robotic character by holding what they already would hold into surgery. So we are headed into our V&V stage right now, and we will go into FDA next year. But we're really happy to be here. Thank you, Daniel.
And Susan?
Hi, thank you. I'm Susan Wood. I'm the CEO of Vida Diagnostics, VidaLung.ai, and we are a lung and respiratory intelligence company using imaging and other information associated with the lung to make more informed decisions for treating patients with lung disease. As per surgery, our main focus here is using the characteristics or information surrounding the lung to determine whether or not the surgery should be performed and predicting outcomes of the types of surgery that would be performed preoperatively.
And then coming all the way from jolly good old England, Richard?
Thanks, Daniel. I'm very excited to have got out of the UK and into the US. I'm Richard Vincent. I'm the co-founder and CEO of FundamentalVR. We exist to accelerate surgical skills through the use of virtual reality and haptics to create efficient skills transfer through that platform. It's a platform called Fundamental Surgery. And we're very, very keyed into the idea of trying to be as clever and intelligent about the way that that's done and the data that comes out of it.
Thank you, Richard. And with that, that's the introduction to the panel. So to get us kicked off on discussion on the topic, I wanted to ask, intelligent surgery, the two words sort of mean different things to different people. For us at Hunniwell Lake Ventures, it's all about digitalization, it's about connectivity or interoperability, and eventually integration of the various systems in the surgical suite. But I think all of our panelists come from different backgrounds, so you can see very diverse, and they all bring with them their own rich interpretation to what intelligent surgery means. So I'm going to start all the way again from the left. Maybe Sean, if you can kind of elaborate a little bit, what does it mean for you and for Philips?
Sure. I think for Philips, it's 3 or 4 things. First is the prep time, right? So the pre and post-op side, the software that supports it, the capabilities and trainings that can help our clinicians improve and also review to avoid revision and get better outcomes. And so very much we're very interested in investing in those areas, pre and post-op, which really doesn't have much to do with the interoperative side from a company and partnership integration point of view. So it's much easier for us to be able to partner in that area. Moving into the actual acute event or intraoperative side, we're looking to augment the experience for our clinicians to be able to do the procedures better, down to if they're spending 8 hours in the cath lab, how can we make the noise level reduce more and their ambient experience much better? And so we think about that a lot in a more holistic way, and that for us is also intelligent surgery. And I think even some of them less sexy stuff around having data interoperability and get the right data at the right time and reduced latency. We think about that a lot as well, and we're looking for more innovations in that area too. And so I think all of that combined, we're trying to head more towards what we call hybrid OR, as well as augmented intelligence, where really helping the clinicians improve their procedures and not replacing them.
And Rachel, I'm sure J&J has got half a dozen of these robots hidden away somewhere in its many divisions. Is that what intelligent surgery means to you, or something else?
I think for the most part, especially on the general surgery side, it's really looking at that ability to have that next evolution of smart robots, smart tools, being able to have smart instruments, that also feeds back data, right? So it's also enhancing the human understanding of the data that's coming from those tools, and whether it's advanced imaging, what the surgeon is seeing, how does that translate into data that can then also be used for better outcomes for the patients.
So smart intelligence, I mean, that's something that you identify with, right, Nissan? I mean, in terms of decision support, that's kind of what Augmedics is all about.
Yeah, you are correct. First phase that we're now focusing on is to provide data to surgeons. We have surgeons they need to rely on this data when they operate, whether it's a preoperative imaging like a CT or MRI scan, or any data that the patient come with. We're providing this data during the surgery in real time, and we're helping surgeons to align their implants. But the data is only one thing. I think intelligent surgery is much more than just providing the data to surgeons. Intelligent surgery, to me at least, it's a system that is intelligent, that is thinking like the surgeon, that can give surgeons suggestion of what to do, or warnings, or what to be careful when they operate. Basically, not just helping the surgeon to make the decision, but rather making a decision, or suggesting the surgeon what decision to do, or to make, or how to perform the surgery. That's an intelligent surgery to me. And like I said, the first phase is to provide the data to surgeons so they will make the decision. The next phase, second phase, is that this intelligent systems will make the decisions.
Okay, thank you. And Bruce, you have your own robot to compete with J&J's. I mean, is your intelligent surgery any different or the same?
It's interesting. I don't come from a traditional med tech background. My background is data analytics. It is AI. And data mining, we did that starting in 2000 moving forward. So it was all about the data. It was always about the data. And the collection of data is what's critical, and then the mining of that data is what's critical. Our robot is really a means to an end. We want to get the robot out there where we actually view ourselves as a software company that's actually selling a robot. And the robot will be sold as a service. So we'll launch the company as a service. And that comes back from my software as a service background. So we're trying to converge high tech into medical by bringing some practices that we knew work in high tech and in software and bringing that into an industry today. So we're looking at intelligence where, eventually the robot, sure, it's all going to be intelligent. We're going to collect data similar to J&J's robots and on all the robots, and that's where it's headed. But it's going to take years to collect that data, and it's going to take years to figure out that data, and it's going to take years to, in real time, feed that data back to the surgeon while he's doing the surgery. So I don't want to fool ourselves that it's going to happen next week, but at the same time, intelligent surgery is coming, and that wave will be here. So we're getting our robot out as quickly as possible, and then we're going to do nothing but push software to that robot, just very similar to the iPhone. Just get the platform started, get it going, and then move from there. And that's really how we see that.
So you mentioned data analytics and AI, and at Hunniwell over the last 2 years, we have come across maybe close to 100 different companies that are using AI in image processing, right? Taking a look at all of the images, how we can augment them, improve them, and of course be able to improve the diagnostic accuracy of those. And that's kind of what Susan's company does. But Susan, I think you define intelligent surgery differently, right, in terms of precision. Tell us about that.
Well, I think it's a nice segue from Bruce. We are a robot. We're a software company, no robot at all, just software as a service. And the way that we look at intelligent surgery is to have the data, the analytics, the evidence around whether or not the surgery should be performed in the first place. Do you have the evidence that the patient is going to have a positive outcome? And then once you reach that threshold, which surgery to perform? Is it in the most minimally invasive way possible? But I also think that the third component of that is that post-surgery. So I'm in the lung and respiratory space. Surgeries like lung transplant have a 40% rejection rate. So the intelligence to manage those patients post-operatively, to find early indicators of rejection of that lung as early as possible to make sure that surgery is valid for the long term. That's the way we look at intelligent surgery.
And then finally, Richard, you're in a virtual world all the way out there in England, so I'm not surprised that you see intelligent surgery as about connectivity and connecting people and systems.
Yeah, absolutely. Most of our connections are actually here in the US, and the way we create those and really try and bring that intelligence. I think we're going to have to start a board of how many times we say the word intelligence. The way we try and do that is really to create collaboration. So bridging the physical divide, allowing us to gather like this without having to gather like this, much as we love it, so that we can collaborate together, we can learn together. And that could be either in a pre-operative environment where you're, to your point, Susan, looking at the precision of the capability, through to the live OR environment where you're looking at bringing experts in to observe, to train, to guide in those virtual spaces.
Thank you. And so, the use of technology to improve decision support, I mean, that's a common theme that we've heard again and again from the panelists, information processing, analytics, decision support. So that's a given. That's kind of like the here and the now and the today. But if we ask ourselves, let's kind of take this trajectory and push it forward another 10, 20, maybe even 30 years. What is possible? What's the vision for, what's the holy grail for intelligent surgery? I'd like to ask the panelists sort of to kind of dream on that a little bit, maybe starting with Nissan and your views about sort of, I think you made one comment in our conversations that current devices are far from intelligent. What do you mean by that, and where does that take us going forward?
Even our device, even the augmented reality that we're providing is just a navigation system that gives the navigation data in a more comfortable way to the surgeon. Instead of looking on the screen, he sees all the patient anatomy right in front of him as if he or she has X-ray vision, right? So, but again, this is just bringing the data to the surgeon while they operate. This is not very intelligent. This technologies that we're using is, we developed it, but navigation exists for decades. I think the Holy Grail will, as I said, that's the phase one. Phase one will be to give surgeons the data in real time so they can analyze it themselves and decide what to do during the surgery, right? That's what we're doing. The next phase, as I said before, it's going to be, the system by itself. The system analyzes the data and then gives suggestions to the surgeons what to do. The Holy Grail will be that the surgeon will be so dependent on this technology, they will not do anything without the system telling them what to do during the surgery, right? They eventually, and we already see systems like that. Even if we go outside the surgery space, we are counting our, Google navigators or whatever ways to guide us. It's going to be the same thing. Eventually, I think that the Holy Grail will be that surgeon will be so dependent on this technology they will not do any surgeries without getting their advice.
So instead of the surgeon telling the intelligent system what to do, the intelligent system's telling the surgeon.
That's correct.
And guiding them.
That's correct. And eventually, I don't know if it will be like in 20 years, 50 years from now. Eventually, the surgeon will be redundant, because then you connect a system like that, an intelligent system like that, to a mechanical arm that can do the surgery without, the surgeon, which we know that exists today. But if you combine between the mechanical robot to an intelligent system like that, you don't need a surgeon anymore.
Okay. The surgeon will be redundant. I'm not sure if there are any surgeons here, but Sean, I think you have a different view, right?
Indeed, and I might be biased on this, but the surgeons will stay in Philip's world, so rest assured there. And I think what Nissan says, I agree with to some extent as well. And where we see this moving forwards is probably two fronts, right? So you got the patient and knowledge about the patient, and there's a lot of, I think, headwinds around having that data today, and so we work on things called the digital twin, where we want to be able to quantify the patient in a way that the surgeons will know everything about them ahead of time. And I think there's quite a bit of inroads there around regulatory stuff, privacy, et cetera, to be able to do that. But in 10 years' time, I see that as less of a roadblock and knowing way more about it. Now on the intelligent surgery side, where I see things going is the ability to do remote and being able to have a bit of skills arbitrage, where you're able to send a robot, maybe the Galen Robotics robots, to an area of the world where that skill isn't available, and be able to conduct that surgery. So there's a bit of a more impact element to it as well, and trying to drive towards there is something that we are also very interested in. And so remote surgery, hybrid OR, and extending the reality is our vision.
So still on this theme of the battle between the surgeon and the robots, Bruce, you dream of a robot with cognitive abilities. So this is California here. Are we talking about like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Terminator and Skynet, or something more benign? What are we talking about here?
I think the next years coming, you're going to see a convergence happening. You're going to see dissimilar systems come together. You're going to see C-arms, navigation, robotics, nerve monitoring, all these dispersed devices come together, and it's going to end up surgery in a box. And you're going to see intelligence, you're going to see software run these things. And the surgeon's going to be able to perform surgeries in real time where everything is talking to each other. So everything's going to be networked, everything's going to be communicating, and he'll have more information as he's doing a surgery. Now with VR, it's what we envision with Nissan's system is we can see as the surgeon's approaching a particular area, you can augment those nerves or those areas or those safety zones, and then you can give him in his vision, in his view, a yellow or a green or a red light that says you're going to stop here, and that's where the robot can stop and do things, and we see that today, but I don't see. I think in the future you're going to, the more intelligence you give these surgeons, the more things they're going to be capable of doing. And so as they get further and further down the road, you're going to see them performing surgeries that today are just about impossible. So I have a very big vision for what will come down the road for a lot of these systems converging and pure software running it.
So no Skynet, right?
Maybe.
Well, I read physics as an undergraduate, both medical physics as well as theoretical physics. And I thought, that was the last time I had to deal with Einstein and all of those crazy theories. But again, all the way from London, I mean, Richard has some Einsteinian ideas about collapsing the space-time continuum. What's that all about?
Right. So that idea of bringing together people without having to travel, we've all done that, obviously, over the last year using Zoom. But that has its limitations, and we've all seen what those are. Using a platform such as ours to bring people together, to have presence together, to share those new technologies, those new robots, those new patient presentations, and rehearse, practice, refine skills without having to spend 6 hours on the road to spend an hour together. If you think about some of the inefficiencies of traditional skills transfer, going to a cath lab or going to a wet lab, not having the ideal patient presentation, having one or two maybe iterations within it, to suddenly change that to a scenario where you could have the perfect presentation and you can iterate on it as many times as you want, deliberately fail. Even when you start to put all of these intelligent devices together, to just practice those pre-human before you're in an OR with a patient, just to make sure you know how the robots talk to each other, to rehearse that, to practice, just to swing the bat as many times as you need to so that you're confident, and doing that with the perfect patient presentation.
Well, so you've heard just a selection of possible futures, possible visions of what intelligent surgery could mean, and I'm sure every one of you, or most of you have your own ideas about what that means. So a little bit later on, we're going to open up the mic to the floor. So, if you have a vision that you'd like to share, we encourage that. Or if you have a comment about intelligent surgery, think about that, and Scott will be passing the mic, or his team will be passing the mic around. But just moving on to we heard about the vision and what's possible. What about the challenges? I mean, the journey is not going to be an easy one. And at this point, I'd like to open it up to the whole panel. Anyone has a view as to what are some of the most pressing, most immediate challenges that they feel is standing in the way of us achieving that vision. Sounds like Susan is something.
Yes, I think some of the challenges, and I like sitting next to Bruce here because we're both software people, but one of the big challenges for, I think, the vision is this open standards and interoperability that would need to happen to achieve this vision. So all these disparate solutions now could come together. I'll just kind of, we've in radiology, for example, these open standards have been happening over the past 20 years. So information is shared amongst the different devices, but that would have to happen in the space as well. So I think that there's a challenge there. Always a challenge is to have the data and the evidence so that you can be predictive of outcomes, as well as, you know, your intelligent surgical instruments have the intelligent software to help guide them.
Interoperability is really something, isn't it? I mean, if you think about it, if you've ever been fortunate or unfortunate enough to go into a surgical suite, I mean, there are half a dozen instruments or machines there. Each one have their own monitors and their own screens, and sometimes you wonder, you know, how do doctors figure it out? You know, which screen they should be looking at when actually they should be looking at a patient, right? And that certainly creates a problem. Any other challenges that?
No, I have
Bruce?
an example. Let me give everybody an example. 21 years ago, Yahoo was the #1 search company, and no one in their right mind thought they could bump Yahoo off. Yet, two guys out of Stanford came out with a Me Too search, and the only thing they brought to the table that was different from Yahoo was analytics. Because once a month, they would send you a report of who came to your website, and the rest is history. So it takes something that simple to take an existing paradigm and shift it, or move an entire industry into a new direction, just using analytics, intelligence in these systems. And when you converge, you take just the products in this panel and you slam them all together, and you throw a major system behind that, things will happen. I mean, we're building I'll tell you, right now, we're building our robot damn near with almost a supercomputer inside of it. Now, we will never touch that for the next years, but we are collecting all the data of when those surgeons move that robot. We're collecting every single movement that we will grind up in a future, for future, best practices and things like that. So I don't mean to.
Right. So analytics is important, but analytics and algorithms and processing power mean nothing if you don't have the data to work on. Right. And in the U.S. we've got HIPAA constraints about exchange and of information, but some other countries in the world don't have the same kind of constraints. In Taiwan, for instance, it's a national insurance system, so 20 million, 23 million medical records of 23 million people are all in one single location. That should be easy to apply some analytics to. In other countries, similarly, they're less concerned about information and data privacy. I mean, Sean, you've given some thought to this area about access to data as well, right?
Yeah, correct. And I think being a multinational that's based in Netherlands, you get to see different versions of data and access and interoperability. I think taking the Philips hat off, as an investor, I actually looked at Finland, right, as a nationalized healthcare and health data system to see, as a leading indicator, what interoperability could look like, and what the next maybe 5 to 10 years could look like for the United States. And I think there's different segments, right? Like as Bruce and some of the colleagues have said, the pieces are all there. Where we run into challenges is, if you have a EP mapping system, the data from the tip of the catheter that gets to the local servers is an issue. Getting from the local servers to the command center that's maybe a stone's throw away is an issue. Getting that up to the cloud is an issue, and then back down to the right folks is an issue from a sharing point of view. Each of those, I think, are node-to-node connections right now, and at some point before this watershed event happens, from Bruce's point of view, it's going to get more complex, right? You're going to get more tech debt. But once that standardization happens, that Susan mentions, I think things are going to just happen very quickly towards a more interoperable future. And I have to emphasize again, data access is still the biggest problem for us, and technology is well beyond, I think, from the consumer sectors as well as the deep tech sectors to be able to support what we're envisioning.
So access to data. If anyone in the audience has a clever solution to that, we'd like to hear it in a minute. But changing gears now, we've got on my right entrepreneurs, on my left we've got strategics, and myself representing the investment community. As a investor or as a strategic acquirer, as you think about intelligent surgery and the kind of companies and projects that you're looking to invest in or acquire, what do you look for, Rachel? Or you or J&J, what do you guys look for?
I think a lot of it boils down to really the ability to innovate, right? They've shown the innovation, they've shown the ideas. Where's the adaptability? Can you kind of expand? Can you think outside the box? Because what you may have envisioned for what you think your product can, should, or will do, we may also want to take it to another level, like maybe let's move over to the side here and let's think through this and let's elevate it this way. And so I think it's that ability to not only challenge us with what we bring to you and say we're trying to find these types of things, so you pushing back and saying, but wouldn't this be better, or wouldn't this make more sense? And then also just the ability to listen to what else could be done, right? So thinking together and doing it together.
Okay. At Hunniwell, we think in terms of sort of, it's easy that there is no lack of technologies that are out there. There are a lot of clever people, a lot of possible sort of pathways that are out there. Really, technology is not the issue. Often we ask ourselves in this world when we're flooded with all these innovations and all of these technologies, in order to pick the real winner, we often ask ourselves, we go back to what Stanford Biodesign likes to call the clinical needs process, right? Is this a real need? Is this a must-have? Or is this a good to have? And 9 times out of 10, maybe 10 times out of 10, a must-have trumps the good to have. And that's what we're always looking for. Sean, although I think you at Philips, right now in the VC community, everyone's talking about unicorns and all of that, but you have a different view, right? You're not really chasing game-changing technology. You're a little bit more practical and down to earth. You want to tell us a little bit more about the Philips philosophy?
Yeah, I think it's we're interested as well in incremental innovation. So not the moonshots where it's make it go big or go home. And I think it's especially within intelligent surgery, both on the hardware and software side, because it's regulated. It's exposed to dynamics where moonshots may be more downside than upside, in our opinion. And what I mean by that is, you have these very distinct, stages of development and de-risking, right? So first in animal, first in human, FDA approval. And each of these, you have precedents from the past. And I think in robotics as well as, augmented reality, it's just wide open. So we don't have any models to think about how do you de-risk that. And so maybe it's a commentary about the Dutch and how conservative the Dutch thinking is, but we think that, growing incrementally, investing in incremental technologies will get us there as well. And I think that there's a challenge, I think, from the investing side, as we run out these models, what are the reimbursements and how do you monetize this? And that's always something that we struggle with. But our style right now is really about working with financial partners as well as other strategics really to work together on the cap table and de-risk a market, and at the same time taking a less heavy-handed approach where if you don't need to use the ROFR for any reason, don't do it, and use more soft influence as a board member to be able to get there as well. And if you look at our investments in the past, guess how many times we've exercised the ROFR? 0. So looking for a more collaborative approach, at least on the investment side, moving forwards.
And just to clarify a little bit a comment I made earlier about how Hunniwell looks at these investments. We're not opposed to transformative technologies, but we recognize that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in innovations around proven technology, where a lot of the technology risk is significantly lower because it's already a proven technology and you're making minor changes to it. But that still has a huge impact on clinical outcomes. And those are the kind of companies that we would be very interested in taking a closer look at. At this point in time, we want to open up the floor to the audience. Anyone with a vision to share. I mean, in this session, we were hoping to sort of inform, about what intelligent surgery is all about, excite, share with you our vision, and also maybe enroll you as we journey on this together. But anyone here with a vision to share or a problem or solution to some of the problems that we have identified? Anyone? If you need a mic, just kind of raise your hand and the mic will come to you. There you are, Dave.
Hi, thank you. I'm Manny Villafana, and please remember when you're doing all of these technologies with the robots and AI, etc., that there are some of us who are still working on the chemical side, on the innovation side, trying to solve the present problems, which will make, in certain areas, greater, I shouldn't say that, will be used in conjunction with what you're doing as we make surgery a little bit easier. I mean, I'm happy to be working on a small diameter graft for bypass surgery so that we don't have to do surgery on the left leg or the right leg or the arms or even on the internal mammary arteries, on the mammaries. So remember, that's also happening. And we'll make it so that even the robot could do it. Okay, thank you.
Dave, you want to say something?
Yes, I'm Dave Hood. I'd like to hear the panel's views on facilitating remote surgery. So this is, or maybe out to patients that can't get to the major surgical sites, can't get to the really top-notch specialist, but can we bring that level of expertise out to some of those people? So I'm interested in how you see intelligent surgery facilitating that as we move forward into the future.
I'd like to maybe direct this to Richard, and then anyone else you can jump in.
Sure, yeah. Absolutely. I think there's a whole raft of technologies that are now collapsing that distance, whether it's a surgical adaptation of a Teams or a Zoom experience with annotation over the top, or in our case, an immersive virtual version of that, which allows you and I to join together to then observe and direct something happening in another location. I think all of that's within our grasp right now. We're certainly implementing it. I know there's a number of other parties here who are doing that.
I can add that we at Augmedics, we now allow a few surgeons in the room to wear the headset and to see each other view. and we're basically synchronizing the headsets to get the feed of the other headset. Now, this is what we have right now, but we are also working on transmitting the data to outside of the OR and having another surgeon to see what the surgeon operating is actually seeing and operating, and also to intervene during the surgery and to give assistance to the surgeons operating in the room remotely. So that's also what we're working on.
I think
Maybe just a quick comment on that. What we notice is, I think the pandemic has driven a lot of thinking about how do you dial in to the OR, and a number of companies like Explore Surgical or Proximity has been able to ride on that wave, and you've seen large investments into these types of companies. I think from a med tech point of view, it is driven by sales and being able to train up our clinicians, and this type of infrastructure is needed. And I think that's probably a first step to maybe 2 or 3 step process into remote surgery. I would see more venture capital dollars going into that area, and then it will spill over into the remote side as well. So first training and look over your shoulder, next is active participation.
Okay. Any other questions? I see a hand up over there.
let me just have one
Go
statement.
ahead. Go ahead, Bruce. In the meantime, there's a hand up over there.
I think real remote surgery, as what I think you're referring to, comes down to elimination of latency. Whether the station is like a Da Vinci is right next door with a direct line into the robot, or if the robot's across the street or across the country. And it's going to come down to infrastructure. It's going to come down to 5G and the Gs after that, where latency doesn't happen, because that just can't happen. So when you're true remote surgery, that's when you're going to see that happen, when that is pretty much eliminated. And that's an infrastructure that there's nobody in this hall here is going to fix that. That's AT&T and everybody else.
But there's a massive DoD-sponsored 5G initiative going on right now in that space, isn't there?
Okay.
Hi, nice to meet you. A lot of the ones that I don't know on stage, and hi to the familiar faces. I'm curious, from working with a variety of different surgical robotics companies, one of the pushbacks that surgeons give a lot is that the robot adds cost and potential complication, but there's no good studies that show that it improves outcomes or adds new clinical value. And there's a lot of people that push back with, like, you haven't converted your practice fully, but I'm curious, as you push for people to invest in these technologies, what are you doing to demonstrate that your technology actually improves clinical outcomes? And how do you respond to that argument from surgeons or hospitals when they give it?
So Rachel, can I put you in the hot spot here? J&J Robotics.
I had a feeling he was going to ask a question like that. So a lot of the surgeons, especially U.S. versus OUS, you hear those arguments. I think your U.S.-based surgeons very much, they do demonstrate the value. They do publish the papers. Your OUS surgeons tend to go in the other direction. So a lot of it is just around the comfort level of the surgeon. It's the interest in really spending the time on the robot. Can you build your skill base? Is this something that you want to do every day, or is it something that you only want to do once a week? And if it's only something you want to do once a week, it's probably not ever going to be something you're really going to love and you are going to push back against. So if it's something that you want to use every day, you want to use with as many procedures as you can, no matter what the technology, robotics, or any of the additional software or solutions, it's really embracing it and believing in it improving outcomes.
Bruce?
I think the biggest killer, and I don't want to use that in a term, but the biggest thing that's going to kill a robot or kill robotics is when a robot adds time to the case. If you're going to add 20 minutes, 30 minutes to a case where you're going to use the robot for 10 minutes, it doesn't make any sense. So you're going to want to see robots help these surgeons get faster and speed up their cases. So the economics is what we're looking at, is where the robots have to have almost instantaneous startup time sitting in an idle position, where you can't go and say to a surgeon, well, it's going to take 15 minutes for the thing to warm up and you got to log in and everything. You know, these things have to be really ready to go with a fast registration. So we're headed into that direction, and that's the direction we're getting from our surgeons. Because the minute they say, if you can get me to do something I can't do, I'm in. If you get me to do something that you can improve what I'm doing, I'm in. You add time to the case, I'm out. And I hear that across the board with the surgeons. So we think that's really the one of the holy grails.
Well, at Hunniwell Lake Ventures, over the past 18 months, we have also looked at close to 100 robotic companies, together with the help of Dave Ufer at Alira Health. We've looked at these companies, and I would venture to make an assertion that, I think the days of the $2 million multifunctional robot that with a huge footprint that occupies the entire surgery suite, I think those days are waning. By and large, physicians are looking to more fit-for-purpose, smaller, more functional robots that do one or two things, and that you can roll from one suite to another. And I think that certainly is going to be more of the trend to come in the years ahead. So we probably have time for one last question from the floor, if there are any. One last question.
There's a lot of pressure for the last question, so I'll try to make this a good one. I appreciate all the views, and I think we all do, for the digitization of surgery and procedures in general. I appreciate the views of the panel. One question I have, I love your views on, is how do we innovate the business model? And what I mean by that is currently the money flows solely on consumables. Maybe a little bit on software, but selling software without a consumable is a pretty difficult challenge. Hospitals don't know how to account for it. CMS doesn't know how to reimburse it. Companies don't know exactly how to make money from it. And my question is, who leads the charge on that? Is it large strategics that go out and say, you know what, I'm not going to make up a random consumable. I'm going to sell you the intelligence because it makes a difference? Or is it CMS? I'd love the views of the panel, how we get over this business model hurdle, because I feel like that's a big challenge standing in the way of introducing intelligence into the operating room. Thank you.
Thanks for the great question. Anyone from the 127 years of wisdom here on the panel?
Well,
Susan?
I'm 120.
No, collectively. Collectively.
He just said I was 127 years old. Only sometimes I feel like that. So where did the question come from? I couldn't. Back there. Great question. As a software company that is selling intelligence, we call it the rolling the rock up the hill strategy to try to get that payable. So I do think that there's a different business model that needs to be implemented so that, again, we can preemptively determine whether or not the surgery should be performed, whether or not they should use a robot, or if there's a more cost-effective way to get the same to get the same solution, to get the same outcome. And I don't have a great answer for you. Only to say is I feel the pain. I'm with you.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that as a company that develops both, and manufacture both the hardware and also obviously the software and the consumables, which are the main revenue generator for Augmedics. I can say that, you know, when I thought about the business model that we currently have, I definitely didn't want to go in the path of just selling the capital like many robotic companies are doing for a $1 million, $2 million robot. And then sometimes these robots are, you know, generating money for the company, but not being utilized. So my concern was, and that's why I started Augmedics, I wanted to bring a technology that surgeons will use. So I created a model which actually be beneficial for the company. The more utilization we have, the more money we make, and not just selling the capital. And there's various ways to measure the utilization. I mean, basically what you're asking is how you are monetizing the utilization. There are various ways. Either you have a disposable that you sell for every surgery, or you count you know, how many times they use the software. I mean, there's multiple ways of you know, monitoring the utilization of surgeons or users on, you know, of your device. It's basically, I think, you know, personally, that's what all the companies need to think about, and not just selling a one-time, you know, device, and so it will be, you know, collecting dust for the long run.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the model's changing under our feet, and I think it's changing, and I think COVID helped it. Meaning, I think COVID, I mean, just this year, what, hospitals lost $122 billion is projected from elective surgeries, is what some of the projections are. So you're going to see capital in these hospitals really tighten up by these VAC committees. And so you're going to want to see new models will come out, you know, shared risk models, as a service models. I mean, we're launching our company as a service just to get the robot out, just because it's not about the robot. It's more about the service that you provide with the next version of apps or whatever, if you want to use that as a term. But the models are going to change. And, you know, talking to the administrators in these hospitals, they're pushing back. They're saying, you know, we want to see shared risk. We want the manufacturers to help us, you know, get the equipment in, but we also want to see a different model versus, you know, write us a $300,000 check and we'll see you later, and, you know, good luck, and the robot or the device ends up in the hallway, you know, collecting dust. And utilization is key, and so that's what the models are going to go to. So I think you're going to see it. It's happening now behind the scenes. A lot of these major device companies are putting that model together quietly, but you see it happening, you know, coming down the road like that.
But I gotta say that just to add to you. Actually, it's pretty hard to base your company only on you know, utilization as a service, because for a hardware company you have a massive cost of goods, so you cannot just spread your systems around and wait until a few years will pass until you you know, cover all your expenses, right? So that's a risk too, as a manufacturer, I'm saying. Again, and the key here is to reduce the cost of goods to the minimum. That's what we are doing. That's a struggle, actually, to bring the cost of goods to minimum so you can sell at a nominal fee the capital, but then charge premium on the utilization, because that's what matters.
Thank you. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to bring the session to a close. I realize that we're standing between you and dinner, and that's never a good thing. So I'd like to thank my fellow panelists for sharing their thoughts and some great questions from the floor. I know this is a topic that's, you know, my fellow panelists feel very passionate about, and I know that they can go on and talk for another hour or two. So if you have any further questions and you want to engage with them, I know that they'll be available throughout the evening. But for now, I think that's all we have time for. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Daniel.